Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is now the one-year anniversary of our first board meeting as a new board. It's been a long year. As a board, all of us ran for office in 2015. All of us were affiliated with a political party. It was no secret. I happen to represent a district that literally sits in the middle of the county. It borders 5 other magisterial districts, almost every single one. I also knew that we were largely finishing up a lot of the construction going on in our district. And so I came on very clear. I told multiple board members, I told the public, look, I'm here to work with all board members. Let's work on the issues that need to be addressed across the county regarding overcrowding, regarding test scores, to continue to improve things. Instead of moving forward from the election and working to address the issues that were needed, what we've seen is some of the most naked partisanship. To call it partisanship, though, is to be nice. Because I've been around politics a long time. I may be young, but I've been involved for quite a while. And I've seen tough political fighters. But generally, they actually follow the law. And when you fight hard and you get beat, fair and square, you can tip your hat and you can move forward. But what we saw, what we've seen now is a total lockdown. And the inability now to put things on the agenda has shown that the partisanship is more naked than ever. And I want to, some things recently have made that even more clear. I think Mr. Jesse's comments crystallized it, because essentially he said, we won the election, so tough luck. And in a world that's supposed to be about kids, you would think that the board members would actually try to work together and show our kids that we can actually be better than Washington, D.C. Taking Washington, D.C. and their messed up politics right now and patting ourselves on the back because we're following them is not an accomplishment. Can staff put the slides up that I gave them? Thank you. I think these statements, though, show just how blatant the politics and the partisanship has gotten. Harry Wiggins is the chairman of the Democratic Party. Repeatedly on Christmas, he laid down the law. No more schools west of Hoadley until the elementary crisis is solved east of Hoadley. He stated that in 2 separate messages on the chairman's page in regards to this issue. Can you actually flip to the other slide? It's even better. Thank you. And just like the members of this board tend to do, anybody they disagree with is a racist. And that kind of even deeper partisanship is very saddening as we try to work together. Y'all can pull them down. The fact that it is the official line of the Democratic Party that some students matter and other students don't should be disappointing to everyone. We talk about the importance of Title I schools. There are half a dozen Title I schools around Manassas that in this conversation about Title I schools gets overlooked, and now we know why. They're west of Hoadley Road. It doesn't fit the Democratic narrative. And so for all of the claims about working towards addressing all students, we know that that's not the case. Any pretense of that is gone. We've seen the chairman strike items from the agenda, and he claims that, well, this is the way that everybody else does it. The chairman has total authority over the agenda. Well, it wasn't, because things that he didn't like were put on before the policy was changed. But when you talk to other boards around the state, and I've asked board members in different regions in the state, what does it take to put an item on the agenda? Some people in one county said, well, if 2 members ask for it, it gets put on. Others said, anyone can ask for it, and it takes 5 votes to make sure it gets put on. And others said, well, we just follow Robert's rules and, we can request it, you can amend the agenda. Robert's rules is very simple processes. The only other board that had a more complicated policy was Fairfax, and the board member there told me, well, they have a very convoluted process that helps us bypass Robert's rules. And that's what we are getting to right now. But while, and not only do we concentrate power that way, but the very rules that we even adopt, we changed our board poll policy, policy 137, to specifically require the superintendent and legal counsel to be conferred with before sending a board poll. Because board polls were going out without even their notification, which got us in a lot of legal trouble earlier this year. And that didn't happen. So look, it's time to actually have a vote. We had eloquent talks about we need to take action and stop just talking about things. Well, then let's take the action. We have the most ironclad promise of money ever. The Board of Supervisors sent us a letter to reiterate their commitment. Upon the adoption of the price model at your January 4, 2027 meeting, is the intent of the undersigned to vote in support of a motion to waive our rules of procedure at the January 10, 2017 Prince William County Board of Supervisors meeting, and to vote in support of a motion to transfer, budget, and appropriate $10.6 million in FY 2017 to the Prince William County School Board in acknowledgement of the previously expressed need for capital funding in the eastern end of the county. You couldn't have a more ironclad promise of money than that. And in fact, it's more ironclad than almost every other promise of money that we deal with in a budget cycle. Last cycle, we had money promised from the state. Well, their revenues didn't match up, and we didn't get it, and that was supposed to be money that was going to give teachers a pay raise. And so we had to rearrange our budget to come up with it because we were going to keep our promise to teachers. But this is the most ironclad promise that you get in terms of commitment for money. There isn't anything more than that. This week, we also saw just how, well, we saw all the arguments against even having this vote. Well, back to having a vote. Look, people want to work together with the Board of Supervisors. Let's actually give them the dignity of responding as a board to something that they as a board offered to us. To not even give them that dignity is a slap in the face. We have the opportunity to walk into a joint session having already done something to show that we're working together. And then we can move forward and go, what more can we do? There's discussions of a large capital bond pool if we can start showing we can work together to even further escalate things. But we could take this money here. We can address schools that don't have an extra auditorium that need it, that have issues with bathrooms that are outside that need it. We can use these $10 million to address very specific needs on the East. This is an opportunity where the president is sitting right in front of us, and we just have to pick it up. But we also saw, I think over this last week, the desperation of the arguments against against having the vote and against even accepting the money. We saw an op-ed that was pretty incredible with the types of claims that it showed. There's a claim that the high school is going to cost $160 million. Well, that's interesting because 3 weeks before, the same person said it was going to cost $190 million. So what are we down to, 140, 150 now? We had, in the exact same document, we had claims that Janine Lawson is a bad person for not approving Stonehaven development, but we should simultaneously pause development across the county. What gives? Where is the attempt at logical consistency? This idea that, we just need land from the BOCS, not money. The BOCS is not sitting on large tracts of land on the eastern side. A lot of it's tied up in parks, a lot of it's very tight. We need the money to start buying land. We're not, there isn't, the BOCS, if it wanted to, couldn't just give us all the land to solve for all the issues we have. We have pieces of land we need to buy. We have others we need to look at. We need money for it. There's also just an ongoing lack of empathy to even try to understand the people who may disagree with them. To throw out that Mr. Trenum came up with the price model just as an excuse to bring back the Patriot design really is incredible in the lack of attempt to even listen to what he's been saying. He spent a lot of his personal time sitting down with staff developing a modern school design that would address a very specific need, the overcrowding issue. Patriot didn't have the 500 extra seats. We needed to address capacity issues. There's also a very weird math issue that keeps floating around. This idea that because high schools are only at 90% out west, that the high schools, or because elementary schools are only at 90% out west, the high schools aren't going to be over capacity. It fails to understand the basics of percentages. If I have a large pool that's filled 90% of the way with water, and I try taking all the water, in this analogy the students, trying to put them in a much smaller pool, that pool will overflow. We have a lot more elementary seats out west than we do high school seats. So as those students move up, the same students will lead to overcrowding, because the way that percentages work is you reduce the denominator and the numerator stays the same, the percentage increases. So look, it's time to actually stop the talk, have the action. Let's have people of integrity who will stick to their word that they agreed to with the Board of Supervisors when we negotiated this deal. There were 5 votes on both boards willing to support this. Let's at least have a vote and stop the lawless actions and start moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Deutsch. And Mr. Wilk.